Hey there, my name is Matt Boisselle. I am from Simcoe Muskoka Skillforce. Today I'm being joined by the Economic and Grants Officer for the District of Muskoka, Luke Preston. Luke, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Matt.
So, Luke, today we are chatting because of a roundtable that was held back in July, and it was on tariffs. And that's obviously a topic of conversation right now for local business owners and just the regular population. What was this roundtable about? Who were some of the parties involved?
Uh, so this roundtable wasn't really just about to talk. We're all aware of the issues and the concerns and the challenges. Really, this was a way to bridge the conversation and provide tools, strategies that people could take away and actually use it in their businesses. So we brought together a great panel of subject matter experts, including the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, Trade Commissioner's Office, Business Development Bank of Canada, and we also had the Honorable Minister Vic Fideli attend as well too. So it was a great discussion, lots of great information shared. Um, and just a way to continue that conversation. I think tariffs are still top of mind, even though there are some recent changes. But it's still something that we have to continue the conversation and make sure that our businesses are prepared and they're able to be resilient and sustainable.
So what kind of discussions were happening? What kind of adaptation strategies or ideas that the panel members brought to the table? What were some of the things that were discussed?
Right. So there was a lot of discussion around um, firms investing in automation, digital tools, ways to offset those higher costs, and look at ways of becoming more efficient. Um, there's a lot of partnerships across sectors, manufacturers working with tech firms to shorten supply chains and to reduce risk. And the key theme was focusing on long-term competitiveness rather than just surviving the current tariff cycle. So again, looking at sustainability, looking at ways that you can put things into place, put resources, put tools into place in order to, ensure that, for the long run that you're building up those pieces and you're able to um, be more resilient and be more competitive in the future.
So you mentioned a variety of sectors. Which sectors are kind of feeling the most pressure right now because of the tariffs and the volatility with the tariffs?
Right. So manufacturing, forestry, agricultural are consistently on the front lines of tariff impacts. In Muskoka and Parry Sound and locally, the smaller firms tied to resource-based industries are especially vulnerable. um, they don't always have the resources to absorb those shocks and those fluctuations. And a key thing is it's not just exporters, logistics companies, retailers, service providers that rely on those industries are also getting squeezed. And the de minimis, I believe, which is anything that's under $800 US, used to be exempt. This is only recent, and now it's not anymore. So that's creating a lot more of concern, right? Because you were able to move goods back and forth. If it was under that threshold, now you have to pay the duty regardless of what the value is of the item. So it's really sort of touches everything, every sector in some way, shape, or form. But manufacturing, forestry, and agriculture seem to be the ones that are consistently at the top in terms of impact.
Hmm. What are some of the supports that are currently out there?
Right. So there's lots of great supports out there. Like I said, Business Development Bank of Canada has a lot of financial tools. They have a lot of advisors that can have conversations and can move people in the right direction. Trade Commissioner's Office is an excellent resource in terms of understanding CUMSA compliance, those free trade agreements, looking at ways, if you want to, of diversifying internationally, as well as also looking domestically to source, product. So in Ontario Chamber of Commerce also as well too, in terms of their advocacy and the way that they are able to support the small businesses. So there's so and that's another thing too, Matt, is it is overwhelming. You think of owner operators in our local area, they're up early in the morning fielding calls perhaps, then they go and do their actual, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., let's say, work day. And then they're fielding calls again and sending out invoices and whatnot. They don't have a lot of time to invest in, looking for this information or sort of um, delving through mounds of information. It's overwhelming. And I'll be honest, it's overwhelming for me too, as somebody who's trying to keep the pulse and round up that information, because I'm not the subject matter expert in any of
Right.
this, but we have people and resources that are. So our job is to point people in that direction. The Muskoka Tariff Information Hub is consistently updated and is a point of reference for that information. So I think the best way, and sorry if this is leading into perhaps your next question, how can small businesses prepare? Having that understanding of the information that's out there, of those subject matter experts, of those people you can talk to, because that's their job, is to
Right.
um, help sort that information, help look at ways to diversify your supply chain, help you to understand your supply chain. That's another
Right.
thing too. I think there's a lot of people that don't really know the details and the granular details in terms of where their product is sourced from, or other ways of, diversifying your supply chain so you're not just solely dependent on this,
Mm.
this one source. And maybe that's not the best price, maybe that allows you to, fine tune, and then that also leads to, a potential cost reduction in your whole operation. So I feel having those conversations is valuable and key, and to take the time to be able, to talk to those experts. Financial readiness is key.
Mm.
Access to flexible capital, uh, planning for those cash flow disruptions, and having that buffer for volatility. We
Right.
talked about, again, I'll mention it again, diversifying your supply chain and your markets. Don't rely solely on, our neighbors to the south. Look in your own
Mm.
backyard. Look at Canada. Is there a way that you can buy, you know, from Canadian suppliers? Or
Right.
again, looking internationally and understanding, and there's a bit of a disconnect there too, because I don't think a lot of people really understand all of the free trade agreements that are out there. CUMSA is the Canada, US, Mexico free trade agreement, and there's a lot in terms of documentation and going through that process to become CUMSA compliant. But if you are moving that much goods to and from, it's worth it to have a conversation with the Trade Commissioner's office and to explore that more. Um, and stay connected. There's chambers and networks that can provide updates, training, and connections. It's out there. Businesses are not on their own. They just have to find a way to make that connection. And I think that's part of our job too, is connecting. It is part of our job, is connecting the dots.
Mhm. So you mentioned, buying within the country. Let's say, just as an example, kind of go back to the example I was going to start with. I am working for, I don't know, we'll call it Ashley's Horse and Tack, right? And I'm a purchaser for that company. I've been purchasing saddles and leather goods from the US. Obviously, I know Alberta is huge for leather goods and tack. I want to start buying within the country. But in the past, there have been barriers for interprovincial trading. What are some of the things that have been kind of introduced to help with that? Is that even a thing still?
So that's a great question, Matt. And I can tell you that Ontario Chamber of Commerce and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce are working, toward with regards to advocacy efforts to reduce those trade barriers. And if you look at provinces like Nova Scotia, PEI, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Alberta, and BC, they've introduced that legislation and signed agreements to reduce their own trade barriers. Um, so it really seems to me silly to have these restrictions within our own country. But that does allow us to move goods more freely, as I believe we should within our own country. And an interesting tidbit here is reducing, fully eliminating interprovincial trade barriers. All provinces, Canada can just trade freely throughout the country. Could boost Canada's economy, according to an economist, by up to 200 billion annually, or $5,100 per person. Um, so it's great to see that those discussions being had by the government with advocacy efforts, sorry,
It's okay.
through the chambers. But it's a strategic response to those tariff threats, which really the reduction of those barriers strengthen Canada's economic resilience.
So you mentioned governments and the role that they are playing right now within the interprovincial trading. But what other roles do they play when it comes to helping businesses managing these tariffs, or the volatility, or even the question of tariffs?
Governments provide relief programs, and I can speak to one that was mentioned specifically at the roundtable, which is the Ontario Together Trade Fund, OTTF. There is also funding in terms of can export and services through the Trade Commissioners Network. Um, so, and I'll step back. The relief programs that the government is providing, if provincially, I believe it was earlier this year, it was announced that they're providing approximately $11 billion in relief and support. So it's great to be able to, for businesses to be aware of that, to again, reach out to funders. Each funder has people, advisors that you can speak to make sure that your eligibility wise, that you're good to go there, as well as potentially review applications and have further discussions if that's something that fits, if their business needs fits within the funding stream.
Mhm.
I had mentioned before that the Business Development Bank of Canada offers advisory support. The gentleman that was a subject matter expert on our panel is a senior advisor. So businesses can connect with those individuals to explore options relating to financing tools within the BTC network. And again, the advocacy efforts from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, so the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, for continuing to reduce those interprovincial trade barriers is important. So it's you know, government traditionally is a slow moving vehicle.
Yeah.
Um, there's in that tariff talk, there was a consensus that governments need to move a little bit more faster in terms of the harmonization and red tape reduction. Um, it's essential for businesses, however, to reach out to your local chambers, to take these concerns to provincial and national chambers for lobbying and advocacy purposes.
Hmm.
That's one thing I think that people can do right off the hop is to be that united voice together, and there is strength in numbers. So there's many things that the government uh, is involved in terms of federally or provincially, not just aside from those relief programs. But those I believe are key, and you'll continue to see those come out, and there'll be programs that will be able to provide some financial relief and offset from these trade disruptions.
You mentioned the federal government, provincial government is obviously very important in this matter, with Victor Fedeli, the Honorable Victor Fedeli, showing up to the meeting and providing some excellent information. What are some of the top priorities at a federal and provincial level?
Well, the panelists emphasized two priorities: trade diversification and domestic resilience. So trade diversification, we can't put all our eggs in one basket with the U.S. market. Canada's free trade agreements are a way that you can look to diversify. Um, and having support from the Trade Commissioner's office to be able to, look at existing agreements like we had talked before. There's confusion around what free trade agreements are out there, and how the your business could potentially fit into that. So looking at ways to have discussions around that, and potentially mobilizing internationally. And the other priority is domestic resilience. We talked about this before. Looking at ways to source within your own backyard, i.e., within your own country, within Canada. Um, so we need to ensure, though, that those businesses have the tools, the financing, and the policy environment to adapt quickly. Um, I'll come back to this point again. The Ontario Chamber of Commerce pointed out that interprovincial trade barriers are holding us back. In some cases, it is easier to trade internationally than with another province. So it is encouraging to see that there's provinces that are reducing those barriers, and most recently, with the provinces taking steps to remove barriers for specialized professionals, making it easier for them to work across provincial borders.
So I guess my last question for you today, Luke, what's the big takeaway for anybody listening today, especially local businesses?
So I think, although we're seeing reductions in tariffs, which means lower costs, better access to U.S. goods, um, we can't dismiss that volatility is the new normal. Things can change within an hour.
Mhm.
So it's important to be in the know. It's important to understand your options, leverage conversations with those subject matter experts, and utilize the tools and the resources that are readily available to assist you. Um, I'm sorry to harp on it again, but understand your supply chain. Identify which goods are now tariff free. Negotiate your contracts where possible to look at sourcing domestically or internationally with countries that have those favorable trade agreements versus solely relying on the United States. Um, and I've said this again, that Canada underutilizes free trade agreements with other countries purely due to lack of knowledge, or understanding or awareness of these free trade agreements. So connect again with a subject matter expert, connect again with the Trade Commissioner Service to help you. Stay informed, use tools available, advisory programs, financing options, our tariff information hub, which is on our Engage Muskoka page. There's also many other partners and organizations that have similar information pages. Get connected with your local Chamber of Commerce or your local export advisor. They're there to help you to help you connect the dots. And most importantly, think beyond, think internationally if you can. Think domestically, but think internationally. Businesses that diversify, innovate, and prepare financially will be the ones that turn these challenges into opportunities. So I think it's important to make sure, that you're not solely relying on one source, that you're able to look outside, and see if that's something that is feasible for your business. But a lot there, but really it just comes back to being informed, reaching out to the right people, and making sure that that your business is resilient and sustainable in the future.
That's awesome. Thank you very, very much. Luke Preston, the Economic Development and Grants Officer for the District of Muskoka. Luke, if anybody has any questions for you, what's the best way they can contact you?
Yeah, Matt, sure. They can reach out to me. My email is luke.preston@muskoka.on.ca. Or, stop in at the district office. More than happy to have a conversation. I think it's really important, to have those roundtable discussions, to have, in-person discussions and have that, human connection. So more than happy to meet with anybody to discuss further. But thank you for having me today, Matt.
Hey, my pleasure. One last really, really quick. Where can people find the Engage Muskoka website?
So the Engage Muskoka website is it's www.engagemuskoka.ca /tariff response. And like I said before, there's it's being consistently updated with new information as it comes out, new tools, support, things like that. So it's a great resource to point people in the right direction.
Awesome. Luke, once again, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Matt. Have a great day.